I'm no good at taking good advice, and I'm self-careless, so don't tell me twice that lately I've been so stuck in my head that I forget just about everything my therapist said. Maybe I'm self-helpless, maybe I'm self-helpless. Maybe I'm self-helpless. Maybe we are all self-helpless.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Self-Helpless podcast. I'm Delaney Fisher, and today I'm joined by an incredible guest, Ashley Frohnert, who is a director of social media and has been in animal advocacy for 10 plus years. And she has a passion for beauty and fashion. And in her work, she's really been able to merge all of this together to help people make conscious choices around what they wear, what they buy, all that good stuff. And this episode was actually inspired by the one that we released recently with slow fashion stylist Jenna Flood. And that one was really about finding your style and simplifying your wardrobe and really how that can boost your confidence and energy, opting in for slow fashion versus fast fashion. And we kind of hit on some different materials and fabrics and things like that very briefly in that episode. You know, that discussion was more about how to curate your closet or things to add to it, to make you feel awesome. And it made me want to have a conversation about what things we should all just keep out of our closet. Like the things we need to stop buying, period, because of how harmful they are to human health, the environment, animals. And it's really something that we as consumers have been kept in the dark about for a really long time, but now there's much more information available to us, and we are collectively making different choices together, which is really awesome to see. So Ashley and I are talking about the 7 things we can all stop buying in order to make a massive difference for the planet and all of its inhabitants. And what's awesome is that we don't have to sacrifice anything. We don't have to deprive ourselves in order to make this difference. We can wear something that looks and feels exactly the same on any budget, still look cute, without contributing to this, fucked up industry. So a bit of a disclaimer, some of this stuff is pretty shocking. A lot of this information will probably blow your mind. And some of it is hard to hear, but also really important to know about. When things are left in the dark, we can't do anything about it. So I recommend not avoiding this conversation just because it may be uncomfortable in certain parts. Or listen to it on like double speed or something. Get through it quickly. I know if you're here tuning into this podcast, you care. You care about making a difference. And that really means a lot. So thank you for being here. Thank you for giving a shit. And here's my chat with Ashley. So why should we even care about our purchases and being selective around what new things we bring into our closet, what new, buys that we make? What kind of impact does that actually have on the environment or human health or animal welfare? Anything that you want to share generally, then we'll get into specifics.
Yeah, so we have to care because everything that we're buying comes from somewhere. So who made it? Was it somebody who was being exploited for low wages in another country? Who is it made from? Was that an animal who was slaughtered? Were they skinned? Were they sometimes skinned alive? And then also like just generally, where is it coming from? Is it coming from organic cotton and being kind to the planet, or is it coming from areas that are polluting waterways in local communities? I think we all just need to think a little bit more about, the whole story of each piece that we bring into our lives. And in a time and place where we're cycling through clothing so fast and we're buying so much of it and trends are happening so quickly, like sometimes you're seeing a trend and it's already dead at that point, and then you have just bought something on TikTok Shop. And you're just not thinking really about where it came from, and who may have suffered for it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I definitely was someone, I was a consumer that just figured, well, if it got to the shelf, everybody did their due diligence here to make sure it was ethically sourced and made and everything's fine, right? It's legal, so it's fine, right? And to come to these realizations that, oh my gosh, the burden is actually often on the consumer to
Yeah.
figure out where things came from is a very overwhelming realization here that, oh, right. Again, like we have to remember, like just because something is legal doesn't mean it's not causing a lot of harm. So
Mhm.
I'm so curious with your expertise in social media and I'm sure you just organically know what trends are happening out there. What kind of trends are you seeing or have seen that you would love people to think differently about, and they might not realize that they're promoting something that's actually really damaging?
Absolutely. And I think I can really empathize with you, by the way. I used to shop almost like exclusively at Forever 21 because it was so
Yes.
so affordable.
Right.
And
Right.
there are a lot of trends that they do well. Like it looks nice, but it looks nice for about a minute and then it's falling apart sometimes while it's still on the shelf. And then you
Yes.
can, eventually find out that that's because it's sourced very poorly. But some of the trends I think recently, definitely the mob wives trend is a really big trend that as we're heading into a
Yes.
warmer season, it's kind of slowing down, but that's one that we saw a lot of people wearing fur again. And that's
Right.
something that I think a lot of folks, not everybody, has learned is very cruel. There's just literally no excuse, honestly, for wearing fur. These animals are caged. Sometimes they're caught in the wild in horrific traps and they're left there to essentially die or suffer until they're killed right there in the trap. And then they're skinned, and their skin is turned into some sort of fur jacket or fur trim, what have you. So that is something that we've seen recently that's just been really horrible. I think another one actually is sambas, and I have vegan sambas, and my husband has like 3 pairs of vegan sambas that he's been rocking for like 3 years.
Wait, what's a
But a lot.
samba? What's a samba? I'm sorry, I'm not cool. I should have prefaced with that.
I wish I was wearing it right now so I could show you, but they're an Adidas shoe,
Oh,
and
okay.
they like traditionally started in the soccer world, but they're just like a simple, really really cute. I mean, I love the way that they look. Like I said, I have some, and they
Yeah.
do make vegan versions, but a lot of them are not vegan. Like the majority of the ones that people are seeing, especially like the colorful ones. I do have green ones that are made from hemp. It was a collab with John Witherspoon. I'm very obsessed with them. But there's like blue ones and yellow ones, and all of those are not vegan. They're actually made from suede. So that's a cow, sometimes a particularly young cow that is used to make those shoes. So
Wow.
that's a trend that I think a lot of people like the look of. I always see them like on TikTok and like the cool girl outfit inspo. But they're made from a cow.
I got to be honest, I didn't even know suede was cow. I mean, I think these are like some of the big problems with this
Yeah,
stuff is like you look at a shoe, it looks like a shoe. It doesn't look like any animal parts. You also
totally.
hear a word like suede, they don't call it what it is. They don't
Hmm.
say cow skin or
Exactly.
murdered cow, right? And so that would definitely make us think differently as we're purchasing things. So tell us more trends. I'm so curious about this, but that just blew my mind because I've been working in animal advocacy for a bit, but you're learning new things every day. Didn't know about
Every
suede.
single day. And the
Yeah.
euphemisms really got me. Like I didn't know what suede was. I didn't know even like what cashmere was, honestly, when I first started. I
Same.
just thought it was like this material.
Oh
You
my
just
gosh, I
don't
thought it was a
know.
very soft cotton. I thought it was
Yeah.
just really soft cotton, and this like, no, that's a goat. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What? It's
Yeah.
it's marketed as this very luxury item, and you're
Exactly.
telling me this is a goat was killed for this fucking sweater. Are you kidding me? Right? Like it's
I
insane.
know. I know. I can remember just as a kid, like going into places like Marshalls and TJ Maxx and Macy's, and they have these like huge tables of cashmere. And I was like, that stuff is so nice. I wish my dad would wear that.
Yeah.
And no, it's just this tortured goat.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Okay, so
they
we
get
got
us.
these sambas. Bombas? Oh
Sambas
wait,
with an
bombas is the
S.
stock, right? Okay,
That's
sambas
yeah.
is the shoe, and the mob wives trend, which I have heard of. And what other things are out there?
Yeah, I think something that's emerging right now, that people are really into, thanks to the Queen Beyonce, as well as like Bella Hadid, who's dating a person who is in rodeos, as well as like shows like Yellowstone in my life with the Walter Boys. A lot of us, I guess, including myself, are playing into the cowboy trend. Um,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of things you can do that are vegan. You can get vegan leather cowboy boots. They make them out of cactus leather, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
Beyonce was actually just wearing Stella McCartney leather pants with her look the other day, which is really exciting. So that was cruelty free as well as sustainably made. So that's really
Awesome.
exciting. So you
Awesome.
can do it in a vegan way. But there's also kind of like the story of like, what is a cowboy? And a lot of times they're, herding animals,
Right.
particularly cows. Another thing is like some people I think might be interested in going to rodeos because of this trend.
Yep.
So you have to remember what is a rodeo, and it's like somebody on a horse who has like spurs in their feet and reins around the horse and a whip in their hand, and they're like chasing this little baby cow to try to catch them in a lasso. And
Right.
that is cruel. It's
Right.
not entertainment, so that's not, I don't think, something to necessarily celebrate. This is a baby cow, and you're taking it upon yourself to have some sort of like ownership and aggression over them and think that you're better because of it. Just something to keep in mind when playing into the cowboy trend.
Right. And here, I say this as somebody who has attended a rodeo before. I have been to one when I was younger, and I think it can be hard for us to separate what we see as this like fun family tradition that was, shared with us, and we love our family, so we put this in like this is a loving category right here. But the reality is that we need to adjust this stuff.
Yeah,
It's hard to
absolutely.
make that separation. And you're so right. So funny. I was just talking to my sister the other day, and she was invited to a bachelorette party, and they're going to Nashville and doing a whole cowboy theme, and they're going to a rodeo and all this stuff. So yeah, this trend, like we see it on social media, but it does permeate into real life
Totally.
actions and money being spent on things
Yeah.
that really shouldn't be around anymore.
Yes.
So I actually have a question about the mob wife thing. How do you feel about like somebody thrifting fur? What's going on there? Like if somebody said, well, it's not new fur, a new animal wasn't harmed for this, it's already made. What's that seems kind of like a complex situation. Any thoughts around that?
Totally. And to me, it comes down to like, what is the message that you're sending when you're wearing that, not just to the world, but also
Yeah.
to yourself. You likely do know the origins of that garment,
Yeah.
and it is tortured animals. And I think too, people asking themselves, like, what if this was tortured kittens? What if this was a tiger or an elephant?
Right.
Are you only justifying this to yourself because they're like a mink or a fox? And a lot of people, just kind of speaking about euphemisms, going back to that point, a lot of people don't even know that minks are animals. They just think they like know that material for eyelashes and for like stoles, for stoles, and they're not connecting that that is an animal.
I gotta
Um,
be honest, I did not know. But I know now, but I did it for a long time. I really thought mink was a material. I think
yeah,
this is the problem. We're not seeing a
yeah,
mink walking down the sidewalk when we like
no,
walk our dog around the neighborhood. So
yeah,
if our first experience or interaction with mink is a hat, why would you think anything different
absolutely.
until you're exposed to something different?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's totally true. And they're actually like, by the way, everybody, really cute, like little weasel-like animals. Very
Yeah.
sweet. But I think that's a good point too, is like we are very de desensitized, especially like those of us who live in cities, or spend a lot of our time like between work and home, and you're not really like out in nature in some way. So
Right.
sometimes the only connections that we have to these animals are through the products that we get from them, which we shouldn't
Right.
have, but like
Right.
food or garments. So I think that's another thing that we're all kind of experiencing is we don't have the time to like really research these animals and like get to know them or see them on TV, through like, of course, ethically sourced wildlife films. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it can be challenging to, like you said, understand the animals when you first see them as a hat.
Absolutely. And I think, a really simple kind of litmus test, and you absolutely just nailed it, is asking yourself, how would I feel if this was a dog, a cat, or a human baby? Like how would I
Hmm.
feel? And why are we thinking about this any differently? Why do we put ourselves in this category that we think we are superior to all other animals, and that they're here for us to just use however we want, when humans are animals too? We
Exactly.
think of ourselves totally separate. But okay,
Hmm.
what are
Hmm.
other products or materials specifically in like the fashion world that we might not know comes from an animal?
I mean, I'm just gonna say leather. I know that
Yeah, yeah.
that might sound silly. But I just sometimes I really don't think that people, and I was this way at some point. I was even a vegetarian who wore leather, and I just don't think I really understood it because it's so prevalent. It's in almost every handbag that we see. It's
Yeah.
in wallets, it's in shoes, it's on belts. This is a cow, and some people might try to justify it by saying that it's like a co-product of meat, and if we're eating so much meat, there's like all this leather, but that's really not the case because leather is financially more viable. So folks are making more money on the skin than they are on the meat.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
mhm.
I did not know
Yeah.
that.
And also what it takes to make it so that that skin doesn't just like sit in your closet and rot like,
Yeah.
it
Right. Right.
should. That process is really harmful for the environment and also for a lot of humans, like particularly in under-resourced countries. People are having to take all of these chemicals, often with their bare hands or their bare feet, and start tanning the skin again so that it doesn't
Yeah.
decay. And that stuff is really obviously horrible because if you're trying to make this skin not decay, imagine how that's going to feel on your own skin. So that's just, I think leather, and of course, all the deforestation and particularly the Amazon, as well as just the general impact negatively that it has on the planet,
Yeah.
is just incredibly harmful. So all around, it's just a really bad, quote unquote, material. And it's not just leather from cows who are like a little bit older. There's also a lot of calf skin leather, which is horrible. There's
Ugh.
also lamb skin, and sheepskin too, which like Uggs are sheepskin. That's not wool. So whenever you see those
Oh,
foods, I know that's
my
another one that
goodness.
kicks me in the face.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is literally the animal has to die for that. And of course, sheep used for wool eventually do die too, but the
Yeah.
sheepskin, and lambskin, Sherpa as well, like those are also young sheep. Um, and there's also leather made from like alligators and kangaroo, which a lot of soccer shoes are made from kangaroo leather. My husband plays soccer, so that's how I found that one out.
What?
I
I
know
mean,
that
just shit
that
that you
blew
would
my
never even
mind.
think about. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
It is banned in California. So those of us who live in the state, it's not for sale in the state, but it's still for sale in many places in the US, which I think just playing into what we were kind of talking about with species, I think a lot of people like have a lot of respect for kangaroos. But in Australia, they're treated the way that like we treat coyotes, which is kind of like, I'm a little scared of you and
Interesting.
there's like too many of you, even though, this is their home and we should respect
Right.
them.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. So many things from what you just said. Okay. So you're telling me that this is destroying the rainforest, right? Because they got to make room for all the animals that they're growing for these products. It's polluting waters, actually poisoning people's like water supply because of all the chemicals that have to be made, right? Or
Yes.
used for the process. And which of course impacts human health and everything else. It's killing animals, murdering them. Let's call it what it is. I'm so tired of sugarcoating shit in it, just to be more
Safe.
digestible for people. And yet it's still happening,
Yeah,
and it's still a legal process. Of course, there's been a lot of tremendous like growth in this area, but I think it's really sad that this is still happening, especially because there are alternative products to all of these things that look the same, feel the same, are just as fashionable, quote unquote fashionable. They look good. I mean, I think it's one of those things where if people just knew, they would
hmm
do things differently. But
absolutely.
we're kept in the dark about this stuff. And then it's so
Absolutely.
hard to hunt down. Oh gosh, hunt, pun intended. Hunt down the actual source of everything. So,
Mhm.
what are some swaps for these quote unquote products? Like, can we kind of like go down the list of like
Yeah.
what is cashmere and what's an alternative and like all that stuff? Because I think I need this for myself too.
Yeah, definitely. So for leather, there's a lot of vegan leathers out there.
Yes.
And they're made from like I don't know, the whole grocery store. Like you can get
Yes.
grape leather, mushroom leather, cactus leather, apple
Cork,
leather,
right?
pineapple, yeah, cork.
Yes.
Yes, recycled water bottles. That's like one of my favorite because it's recycling. And then the traditional like PU leather as well. Like those are actually still more environmentally friendly than leather because leather also, by the way, is coated in plastic at the end to like keep it sturdy.
Mm.
So
Big.
there's a million and one different substitutes for leather.
Yeah.
For cashmere, there's a lot of again recycled things. So we have like recycled polyesters, there's bamboo, and some of these also tie into wool as well.
Okay.
There's also a lot of just like cotton or particularly organic cotton. But I and hemp as well. But I think bamboo is probably like the most sustainable out of that group.
Yeah.
Um, fur, there's a lot of faux furs that are out there as well.
Oh my
There's
gosh. I've seen some that
yeah,
look very real to where I'm like, oh, are
yeah.
we sure?
I
I
know,
mean,
I
it's
know.
crazy how accurate it looks. All of these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so soft and just like cozy. And it kind of varies too. Like there's ones that look so real, and then there's ones that look like a little bit more fun. So it kind of too depends on like the person and what you want to put out there. Like myself, I get like too worried to wear the real ones because I don't want anybody to think that they're real
Right.
and
Right.
that I would
Right.
wear that. So I wear ones that are like shaggy and bigger. Let's see what other
Can
materials.
we actually talk about wool for a second?
Yeah.
Because I thought, along with I think a lot of people, I thought sheep had to be sheared. I thought it was actually cruel not to like give them little haircuts, like they'd get too hot or something. And is that true, or do they like in the wild? I mean, if there's nobody there
Mhm.
to cut their coat or whatever, they survived. They thought they're obviously still here,
Yeah.
so they did okay on their own. Could you share about
hmm
that process a little bit?
Yeah, and you kind of already gave a lot of it away. Honestly, wild sheep don't need to be sheared.
Yeah.
We've ruined sheep. Humans have
Of
basically
course.
GMO'd sheep to the point where they're producing so much wool for us to make so much wool clothes.
Right.
Um, so that those sheep do need to be quote unquote sheared to stay alive. But again, it's because we've genetically modified them. They're not even like a real animal. We've like created this
Oh
disaster.
my gosh.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
like
wow.
there's just no sheep out there suffering from not being shorn. Yeah, it's a human created problem. So if we would just stop breeding them, that wouldn't happen anymore, and the wild sheep would
Right.
continue living their best lives. And the sheep that we're exploiting, harassing, and farming just wouldn't exist.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, and I also thought that, you're just giving them a haircut. What's the problem? Right? Like, what's the harm in
Yeah,
that? And it's actually a very different process, come to find out.
absolutely.
I don't know if you want to share a little bit about like how it actually works. So I think people have something in their
Mm-hmm.
mind and
Mm-hmm.
then they think, well, this is fine. And then there's no reason for them to look into it or look at something different. What is actually happening when we're, producing wool, quote unquote?
Yeah, and I think the industry's done a great job of painting that picture in all of our heads. Like we're
Right.
just picturing like green meadows and
Yes.
like I don't know, this really nice shearing device. And it's
Yes.
like take my wool. But that
Right.
is not how it is. There's been a lot of investigations into this industry, like more than double-digit investigations. And each time they've found people like, really moving the sheep around and hurting them so that can get as much wool from them as possible in the least amount of time, and without any like restraint from the sheep. So they're like punching them and kicking them, throwing them around, once they're done with them. And they actually are shearing them so fast. And I don't know if you all have seen a sheep who was just shorn, but it is like very, very close to their skin. So that, they almost look
Oh,
like human skin in a way. So when they're going so fast, the shearers actually are like cutting them open
oh
and
God.
they just let it go. I've seen personally like footage of people too, like sewing the wounds closed
Oh
without like any anesthesia or without any numbing pain. I'm like terrified of needles. I
my
can't even like get
God.
shots. So I can only imagine how scared these like animals who are very shy and skittish typically, and that's like also why they're always like together because they feel comfortable in numbers.
Right.
How they feel whenever they're like, being abused like that, and then they're literally being poked and prodded to close these wounds.
Wow.
So it's not pretty and it's not really what any of us, I think, are picturing. We basically factory farmed sheep for wool.
When there's so many other options like cotton
Yes.
or literally anything else but that. And this was really eye-opening for me is that people who shear sheep, they are not paid hourly, they are paid by the pound. Is that right?
Mhm.
So another
Yes.
reason they're going as fast as they can to get the highest
Mhm.
volume as quick as possible, instead of being paid an hourly wage where they could take their time and be more kind to the animal. And I think that makes a lot of sense why this is
Mhm.
happening. And I would imagine that the person doing this type of work is not something that they want to be doing. I'm sure they're
Exactly.
backed into a corner for various reasons. It's sad all around. It's just a sad
Yeah.
system that there's so many victims within one system.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that if people also were able to stop and take the time to think about how they would feel if they had to do these jobs, that would build a
Right.
lot of empathy for those folks. There's a lot of stories of like former slaughterhouse workers, and just folks who work in these industries and how they feel when they go home and like, their son or their wife like says something that kind of triggers them. They're like, I felt like punching them because that's what I do all day.
Wow.
You're so desensitized to the violence because you have to be. How could you not?
Wow.
When you're working in those industries. So they are definitely just as victimized.
Yeah. Yeah. So cashmere really blew me away. I didn't know that was a goat. Is that a similar process to wool or shearing a sheep? Like, what is that?
It's a bit different.
Okay.
So they're not actually like often. It depends sometimes on like the supplier, but they're not as much using the shearing device that's like an electric shearer. They actually have these like old school huge metal combs, and they're just like pulling hair out. And you can like sometimes when I brush my hair, I'm like, oh, that not really hurt. So you
Yeah.
can imagine how you would feel if you were like a goat living on a farm with all this dust flying your way all the time and like spurs and just different types of grass and brush getting into you, how hard that would feel and awful. And so they just are like screaming.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
yeah, there's a lot of footage that's
Oh,
hard to hear because they sound so in distress. And they look it too. And also there's like other things that go into the cashmere industry, like they're castrating the babies, they're taking the babies and separating them in some way from their parents. So it's another, just really, really bad industry. And a lot of it does not occur in the US either. So again, it's just like under-resourced countries having to deal with our demand,
oh my
and
gosh.
putting their people through that trauma.
Ooh, it's and it's just again, it's sold to us as this thing that we should be striving to wear. Earn enough
Mhm.
money to buy cashmere. And behind all of this stuff, this contrast is just so strange.
Mhm. Mhm.
Another thing that I'm learning alongside with everybody is down feathers coming
Mhm.
from birds, geese, all of
Yeah,
that. Again,
yeah.
growing up, I just thought down was something that was in a pillow. Like it's just a
Yeah.
material.
Mhm.
And magically thinking, oh, the feathers must just fall off these birds and we collect them again to like not be wasteful of resources or something. But what is actually happening in that process? I mean, I'm sure it's just another, horror show, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's no fun either. And there's a couple different ways that folks get down. And like you, I also just thought it was like what a pillow was made of or a coat.
Right.
I did not realize that there were feathers involved, but so there's like typically two types. There's live plucking and then after death. So for the live plucking, they take these poor geese, or ducks, and they're literally just grabbing fistfuls of feathers out.
Oh
Um,
my
Similar
gosh.
to the sheep, like sometimes that causes like open bloody wounds, and they're just like, okay, go on, go back to your life. So you'll see too, like these photos of these poor pink ducks because all of their feathers were stolen. So like we're staying warm, humans, while they're out there freezing because we stole their feathers. And once they grow back, it just happens again. And then they're killed typically for their meat, sometimes for like low grade dog food, sometimes for humans. And then the other thing would be to take their feathers after they die. So they're both terrible, but this is sometimes worse because they could be used for foie gras, which is when they're force fed pounds of corn so that we can, again, humans, not me, eat
Yeah.
them as a pate. A lot of it is banned in the US in some places, which is nice. Like some cities do have foie gras bans, but it's definitely still big in this country as well as in Europe. It's really big. And then after they've been force fed and killed for foie gras, they'll take their feathers at that point. Or sometimes they may be killed for just other like duck meat, not necessarily foie gras, and then they'll take the feathers at that point. But either
Oh
way,
my gosh.
the ducks die and suffer.
It just doesn't even sound real. I think that's
I
why it
know.
just like it's so these things are so horrific that it just sounds absurd, like that can't actually be happening. It is. And companies are, I would assume, a lot of brands, because they're buying the material from some other company, they might not even know what's happening behind
Yeah.
their stuff, and they've been in the dark too. And so again, it's like so many victims of the same system. And then of course,
Mhm.
once you know what's happening, you have to do something. It's like impossible to watch these videos and then not take some kind of action. And of course, the action is just very simple. Like instead of that product, buy that one, or go to the thrift shop or something. Okay, anything else? Like any other materials that we might not know came from an animal?
Yeah, so I would say like we talked a little bit about exotic skins.
Yeah.
I've seen some investigations that have blew my mind as somebody who grew up thinking that, Gucci and Hermes and Louis Vuitton were like so luxurious, so
Yes.
fashionable. And when I've seen investigations that relates to brands like these, and you see like honestly, in some cases, like really young people, like borderline children, like chopping the heads off of a lizard. And
Oh,
they're just wearing like sweatpants and a t-shirt, and no shoes. And it's like, how is that luxury? That's
right.
actually disgusting and really traumatic, absolutely horrible. And to think that these brands are making like some cases like tens of thousands of dollars on these products, while these people and these animals are suffering and dying for them. It's really mind-blowing. I don't think that people realize sometimes that even like snake skin, which is super literal, a lot of people think that's fake because often it is.
Mhm.
Especially in like certain circles and certain places where you can buy it. So sometimes when you see it marketed to you as like a luxury item, you're not even realizing that there's a snake. But they are like blowing the snake up with water and air so that it's like as big as possible when they kill them,
Oh my gosh.
to get as much skin from them as they can. And again, this is like young people being forced to do this, for, some kind of to make some sort of living. And it's just, again, it's just horrible all around.
Oh my God. Yeah. And I would imagine, like, if we as consumers we purchase differently, right? These horrific jobs will be replaced with other jobs that don't
Yeah,
require killing animals, right? Then we're going
exactly.
to need more materials from, what other plant-based sources or whatever. What
Exactly.
is, okay, is it called mohair? Is that a thing? Okay, what
Yes.
is that?
So
Um,
that's another goat.
oh, okay. Okay.
Another goat situation. They're called Angora goats.
Okay.
And that was interesting because there was a huge investigation that came out about mohair, and immediately like 300 brands stopped selling it. Like it was very quick because it was just such a clearly horrible video. And
Oh my
these
gosh.
little babies were just like screaming to death.
Oh my gosh.
Because it was so cruel. And we were able to really quickly being like, yeah, we don't need this.
Yeah.
Why are we selling it? But it's honestly not that different than wool or cashmere.
Right. And then what is it called? Is it wait, something, is it a rabbit?
Yes,
Angola? Oh,
Angora,
Angora.
Angora.
Okay, so again, I would imagine that's similar to all this stuff.
It is. And I'm glad you mentioned it because sometimes I honestly forget about it because we have actually made a lot of progress on Angora being like more phased out in the world.
Yeah.
Because there's also investigations of how terrible that is for rabbits as well. I was in 4-H for rabbits growing up, so I got to like meet a lot of Angora rabbits, and they're just like these little tiny white rabbits who are like so soft. And what people do is they grab them and they pull their hair out while they're alive, and they also scream. I know I sound repetitive, but this
Good.
is like almost the story for every animal.
Yeah.
And once it grows back again, they'll take it again. And the cycle continues until, they're not as profitable or producing as much hair. And then they will kill them for meat. And during their life, they're living in these like tiny cages. I mean, for rabbits, like you can give them a really small
Mhm.
cage and they don't actually take up that much space because they're small animals. So of course
Right.
that means the smaller the cage, the more money that you make for these folks. So they're
Um,
going to give them small cages. They don't really clean them. And rabbits are animals who like go to the bathroom a lot. So they're getting all over each other. Their fur is getting all over each other and in all the cages. And it's a space where there are a lot of disease is bred as well. So it's just a very dirty situation. Another thing that's marketed as luxury that is actually very gross and, not luxurious or clean or interesting at all. It's just a tortured animal having their
right.
fur taken.
Right. It's just like, look, we have options. And I also imagine like this information is going to be very overwhelming for some people, just like it
Sure.
was for me. And it still
Yeah,
is that you're just learning for the first time that these things that you've
totally.
been buying are connected to this process. What are some kind of simple tips that we can give people, whether it's, purchasing pre-owned if they can, or if they are purchasing something new? Maybe some
Hmm.
like brands or tips to look for, or
Yeah.
like something to look for on a tag. I don't know. Anything
Yeah.
that you can
Yeah.
offer. Yeah.
Yeah. So I buy basically all my I did buy like one new pair of jeans this year, but buy
Okay.
basically everything thrifted. And what I do is just check the tag,
Yeah.
looking for cotton, looking for recycled polyesters. Denim, of course, is also not related to animals in any way. So just checking the tag and make sure you're not seeing things like leather and cashmere and down, the types of things that we've been talking about today.
Yeah.
And then you can always ask people on Depop too if they don't list the ingredients, I like to call them, on the products. They will get back to you usually and say like, oh, it's actually this, or like here's the link to see it in on a company's website. Then you can look for yourself to see the different materials. Um, and if you are buying new, a lot of companies do have materials listed like right in the product description. It's super easy to see. And a lot of brands have now like leather free or vegan labels that you can really easily spot, okay, this is something that no animals were harmed or killed for. Veja is one of them. Adidas has really clearly labeled vegan things. Nike has Next Nature, which is really clearly vegan and sustainable
Mm.
as well. And then other brands like ASOS and Nordstrom, you can like sort by different things like vegan or leather free. And I think Zappos also has that. Free People has clearly labeled vegan leather. Even like Alice and Olivia and Abercrombie do too. So there's a lot of mainstream brands or local brands to your malls or what have you that you can go into and like pretty easily see if something is vegan or made from an animal.
Mm. I try to get things thrifted because I'm still learning too, and I just like don't want to accidentally purchase something that I didn't realize was connected to this stuff. But of course, like I mean, it is pretty simple. Sometimes I just give it a Google, like in the line or in
Yeah,
the in an aisle at a store, like, oh, never mind, this is where this comes from. Now I know that, and now I don't have to Google it next time. So like
absolutely.
once it does get easier to sift through. But those are good tips. Um, do you personally have any favorite brands that you like wearing? I know you mentioned that you do a lot of thrifting, but
I do a lot of thrifting, but I often notice that a lot of what I'm buying is Zara,
oh,
because
okay.
it's, a little bit more affordable
Yeah.
still, even when you're buying it secondhand, it's just a little bit cheaper than some of the, more expensive brands. And I really do like their styles because I think that they change things with trends. So that's a brand that I like, and they have a lot of vegan friendly stuff. They even have vegan shoes, like a lot of their shoes. Some of them are leather for sure, but there's a lot that aren't that look like real leather.
Yeah.
And I do like Adidas and Nike shoes because I kind of grew up wearing them and they're very comfortable, whether you're getting like running shoes or the vegan Sambas. So I think they
Right.
have some good styles as well. But yeah, a lot of honestly what I get is like random thrifting things that don't have a brand. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of just on the look for weird prints like this.
I love it. No, that keeps it fun. You never know what you're going to find at the thrift shop.
Yeah.
Um, do I would imagine like working in social media and, being on there and seeing all this different content all the time. How do you practice any kind of self-care or boundaries around that stuff? That is such a big topic of like social media burnout and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And also, as an animal advocate, when you're seeing these trends and how they can explode, especially when it's promoting something that people don't realize is cruel, how do
Mhm.
you take care of your own, sanity around this kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's important to find something that you feel like you can do at least to kind of like combat those
Mm-hmm.
trends. Like I feel like if I'm working for animals in some capacity, I am doing like my part, quote unquote, to stop this from happening or to raise awareness in some way. I do have to make sure to take some breaks because I can get really sucked in. Like, this is like my passion. It's also something I really care deeply about, and I also find really entertaining. So there's like a lot of great things about social media, but there's also a lot of negativity there, and a lot of it sometimes feels like you're never doing anything right, or you're never making an
Mm,
impact. So
yeah.
it can be draining at times. So I try to, take a weekend off here or there, make sure I'm like going to the beach or just taking my dog somewhere, spending time with my husband and just being away from the phone. My husband definitely tells me that I use my phone too much. So he also helps keep me in check there.
Yeah.
Um, so that's kind of how I practice self-care too. And also taking like no like just full time away from any screens, whether
Yeah.
it be computer or TV as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So good. So important. I'm glad you have your accountability partner and your husband. That's good.
Yes.
That's very convenient.
Yeah, he
Um,
helps.
yeah, another question for you. Are there any other euphemisms we should be mindful of? Like, for example, like the whole Suede thing that we don't know is a cow or
hmm
whatever, or at least I didn't know.
hmm
Anything else out there that marketing terms that try to, a little bit tricky with the consumer?
Yeah, I think nubuck is like a leather that is hidden. I'm not really sure what makes leather nubuck, to be honest, but
Oh, never heard
that
of
is
that.
straight up leather. I
Okay.
think some car brands use like a different nubuck, like NEW, and I think that one is vegan, because it's like trying to say that it's like new and innovative. But the traditional, like I think it's NEU or NUE. That one,
Mm,
um,
never heard of it.
is from a
Weird.
cow. Um, I think for fashion, I think we've gotten them covered. There's so
Yeah.
many in other things like beauty. But I think that's most of them for
Yeah.
fashion.
Oh my gosh. Well, I was going to ask you a beauty question. When you see a beauty product and maybe some say vegan and some say cruelty free, is
hmm
that the same thing? Because I've heard something could like not be tested on animals, but there's animal ingredients in the actual
Yes.
product, or vice versa. There's no animal
Yeah.
ingredients, but they test. What the
hmm
hell? How are we supposed to sift through this stuff?
I know it's very, very confusing. So I think a way to look at it to show that they are not the same thing,
Yeah.
is thinking about like the snail mucin trend or carmine. I know. So
What
snail
is
mucin, people are
this?
putting like the thing that snails leave behind, they're like putting on their face,
I'm sorry,
which
what? And
which
how
is
are they
terrific.
finding this? And they're picking up a snail and just like blotting it.
No, no.
Oh my God. What?
They're selling
I'm not
it.
on social media, so I don't know. Oh my God.
You're lucky. You're lucky. These are
Oh
things
my
we shouldn't
gosh.
know. Oh my
Oh,
gosh. But yeah, they're bottling up. I'm sure they're factory farming these snails. I actually haven't looked into it, but like how else
you
would they get it?
gotta be kidding me. Oh
Bottling it
my.
up and it's like skincare, or this is even weirder.
What the
Salmon
hell?
sperm facials.
Shut the fuck up. Are you kidding me? So people are jerking off these little fish and into a bottle for us? Okay, first of all, this brings up so many questions on how does someone even do
I
that
know,
to a
and there's
fish?
so many jokes
How
in
do you get a
here.
fish aroused? But I mean, I'm sorry. Okay, so okay, can we unpack this a little bit? Anything
Yes,
that you know
yes.
about these like why, how did it start? And then, yeah, how are they doing this? I
I don't
mean,
know how it started, which is the weirdest part. Like, how does that start?
right.
How do you have this idea and why? And just beyond that, I don't even know.
Oh
Um,
my
but
God.
I just don't know why people are trying to steal youth from other animals and think that these are like the magic secrets. It's very weird. But okay, so those things,
Yeah,
maybe they don't test them on animals. I mean they might. I don't know.
right.
But maybe they do not. They definitely contain animal ingredients. Another example is like a honey mask, um, or carmine. So carmine is like in a lot of red lipsticks, and that is crushed up red beetles. So by the way, if you see that
Oh,
on the label, do not buy it.
what
Leave it at
the
Sephora.
hell?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I wish
Um,
brands were required to tell us what it actually is.
yeah.
I wish it said crushed up red beetle
I know because
instead
nobody
of carmine, because then we wouldn't buy it.
you're putting that on your lips, and I've recently learned that in our lifetimes, if you're a lip gloss wearer, you eat about 8 to 9 pounds of that lip gloss throughout your life. So
Oh,
yeah,
it doesn't, again, it doesn't sound real. This stuff does not
I
sound
know,
real.
I know.
And how it's being marketed as these like luxurious products. Okay. All right. So we got the salmon sperm. We have this snail, whatever mask. Okay. I am guilty of wearing honey on my face at one point and don't do that anymore. But why is honey? Why can honey be damaging?
I know a little bit. I'm not an expert on honey, but I know that they
Okay.
do kill the queens, which is something I didn't know
Oh
when
my
I first
gosh.
went
I didn't know that
vegan.
either.
It just comes down to like we're taking their honey,
Right.
and
Right.
using it, and they have reasons to make it and reasons to use it, and we're instead taking it for us.
Right. What will the packaging say
Yes.
if it hasn't been tested on animals or, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things that it might say. So PETA has their own way of sharing it that says animal test free, and that
Okay.
makes it really clear that it wasn't tested on animals. It will also say vegan if it's vegan,
Okay.
and without animal ingredients. And those two things combined under PETA makes it cruelty free because then there's like no cruelty at all.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, there's some other cruelty-free lists out there. You could, just look for a cruelty-free logo, see who it's from. PETA has really stringent rules that you have to abide by to make it onto their list. So like I
Yeah.
trust their list, but there's other cruelty-free sources out there as well. And it
So
usually will say like not tested on animals, cruelty-free in some way, or have a logo.
okay, so but sometimes it's very possible that something might say cruelty free, but there's like animal, if it's not like a PETA specific
Yeah,
brand, it could say cruelty free, but there's still animal ingredients inside, and then vice versa. It could say vegan, but they could be testing
yeah.
on animals.
Yes. So I
Oh
again
my
I use
gosh, this
I use the
sucks.
I
Yeah.
use the PETA list, and there's like certain brands that I'm obsessed with, like Tower 28, where I know everything is vegan and cruelty free. Youth to the People is another one that everything is vegan and cruelty free. I mean, Tower 28 really is my favorite right now. Like my whole face right now is Tower 28.
Nice.
So I would kind of just choose the brands that have the most vegan and cruelty-free things. PETA has a great website, crueltyfree.peta.org, where you can search for your brands to see if they're cruelty-free or not,
Oh,
and if
awesome.
they're vegan or not as well.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yes.
Okay, are there any more weird trends that we have to be careful of, or any more weird, sperm facial masks of any kind? Sometimes you accidentally get gifted stuff, and that's been another thing where I didn't know what it was, and then you look into it like, oh no, how many people are getting gifted this like sperm moisturizer and they have no clue? This is terrible news.
I hope
Oh,
zero. I
bad.
really hope zero.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anything else that you've heard of?
Not off the top of my head right now. I think we've
Okay.
gotten the weirdest ones covered. But yeah, I would definitely, if you see like a cute look that somebody's putting on before buying the products, just do a quick search and, make sure that there's no like beetles or sperm or mucin in there.
You know what? Oh my God, I got my first tattoos like a couple years ago and didn't even realize that tattoo ink could be vegan or not, that they have like beetles in that too, like the beetle shell, or I have no idea, but I had to ask for a vegan ink and
Yes.
didn't even realize that would be something. But I mean, this shit is everywhere. And
It's a
wow.
shame that we find ways to exploit animals in more or less like every facet of our lives, like multiple
Right.
times a day.
Right. Oh my God, Ashley, I need a drink after this episode. And you know what? There's shit in alcohol too.
Yes.
They use like egg whites and some of the beer
Yeah.
processes and fish
Fish
liver and some.
bladder.
I mean, what the hell is
How?
happening? Yeah.
How? I just
Yeah.
like I'm gonna
Right.
filter my alcohol through this fish bladder quick.
Seems the opposite of a filter, if you ask me. Oh my gosh. There's so many things that need to be covered, but perhaps we should have you back for some other time.
Yes, I would love that. I would love that.
This is just unfortunately, it's the tip of the iceberg. Is there anything else that we didn't cover around this specific topic that you think is, important for people to know, or anything that you want to leave people with?
Yeah, I think just doing your own research and just really thinking about what you're doing on a day-to-day basis and how that has an impact on the world as a whole. The
Yeah.
animals, any workers, certain parts of the environment, certain parts of the world. Just really think about it because you can make a difference. And sometimes it can be hard when you go out and you see people drinking out of plastic cups and wearing leather and you see trash. It can be hard, but you can also do your best and be proud of the decisions that you're making.
Absolutely. I have one more question for you. I lied.
Yeah.
I'm curious how you feel about this, because I feel like I struggle with this a little bit now. Is even if I have a nice vegan leather jacket, I do get even nervous about like wearing vegan leather sometimes, because somebody who sees me on the street or whatever, they don't
Yeah.
they don't know it's vegan. It's not noticeably different. And
Mhm.
again, it kind of just like perpetuates this look or trend, I guess, that how many people are seeing that and then seeing a jacket that looks like that and be like, oh, this is just,
Totally.
it's normalizing everything. So I don't know. How do you feel about that? And are you mostly trying to stay away from anything that looks like it could be animal skin? I don't know. I just feel like I want to just only wear cotton, just like
I know.
cotton onesies
I
all day,
know.
every day. I don't know.
Yeah. Linens. I
Linens is
do
fine.
personally wear vegan
Yeah.
leather.
Okay.
I just like wearing black. So I
Yeah.
like black vegan leather as a look. I do have like some pins that say leather free or animal free or things like that.
Oh,
I will
on your
say
jacket?
yes. I will say I don't
Oh,
always wear them.
smart.
Sometimes the pin
Yeah.
doesn't mesh with my look.
Yeah.
But
Sure,
I
sure.
also try to talk to people about it. Like anytime somebody says, I like your jacket, I always say, oh, thanks, it's vegan. And that
Ah.
kind of thing. So I do try to start conversations. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect. Some people are
Right.
going to see me and maybe they won't know if it's leather or real leather, but there's also some beauty in that. Like there is beauty in
Mm,
not knowing if it's vegan because then you're
true.
you're wearing the trend or wearing the look and you're not hurting any animals. That also doesn't look like a cow. So it's
Yeah.
been processed and processed their skin into looking like this black piece of clothing. So, it doesn't look like the original source, quote unquote, either.
Oh, good point. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, Ashley, where can people find you if they want to, follow you on social media or anything else that you want to plug your work of any kind?
Yeah, you can find me at Ashley Frohnert, Frohnert, on Instagram or LinkedIn or wherever you may be.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Yes. Oh boy. I think we're all going to look at our closet a bit differently now, right? Yikes. As hard as this stuff is to hear, what keeps me feeling positive is that the solutions are very simple. Buying this instead of that, it's a pretty simple solution that we have. One thing I totally forgot to ask Ashley about. Also ask Ashley, isn't that like that's like a is that from like the Amanda show? Ask Ashley, this a sketch or something? Anyway, I feel like Ask Ashley is a thing. One thing I forgot to ask her about is silk, because I know that comes from a worm. And I'm sure she would have been a wealth of knowledge about that process. But I gave it a quick Goog for all of us, and it says a silkworm is actually a caterpillar or part of the caterpillar family. And silk is the fiber that silkworms weave to make their cocoons. So, in order for somebody to take the silk from the silkworms, people have to boil the worms alive inside of their cocoons. And these caterpillar folk actually have a central nervous system and brains. And, I believe basically this implies they feel pain. So, alternatives to buying silk. I know for me, I get bamboo silk. I know, made from bamboo, which is incredibly soft. Others they've listed are things like nylon, cotton, polyester, and rayon blends, things like that. I mean, like let's just not buy it. Like, just don't buy it. There's too many other options. It's just all so unnecessary. Anywho, wrapping up with a quote that was submitted by one of our patrons, as well as the Apple Podcast review of the episode. This was sent in by Mackenzie, and Mackenzie shared a very touching message with how the podcast has helped during really difficult times. So thank you so much for that. It really means a lot. And included this quote along with the message that says, "One day, the darkest parts of your story are going to be the most powerful parts of your testimony." I'll read that again. "One day, the darkest parts of your story are going to be the most powerful parts of your testimony." And Mackenzie writes, "I hope this brings comfort to you and anyone who may be in a dark place and needing a reminder to stay strong and keep fighting. Love you and thank you for all that you continue to do during these difficult times." This really is such an amazing reminder. It actually reminds me of this saying, your mess is your message. And, bringing those dark things into light can really connect all of us in so many different ways. It really is incredible when you think about how all of our experiences can help each other. And there's something really special about when someone is vulnerable with you and vice versa. And there's just this instant kind of love, understanding, and it's actually really interesting that this was shared at this time. Just for me personally, there is so much that I want to share with you all about certain things, patterns of things that I've gone through, and even more recently things as well. And I just feel like I can't share quite yet because doing so would be, I guess, potentially outing others' struggles with things that they wouldn't, necessarily share publicly. So I feel like I'm in a bit of a weird spot, really wanting to share my own experiences with you because I am so helped by hearing other people share their experiences with similar things. I'm just feeling caught in between what part is mine to share and what isn't, and how can I share with considering those things. It just feels like kind of walking a very fine line. And I really resonate with people who feel like they won't be able to share certain parts of themselves or their story until they themselves are much older, because that means other people will be way older, if you catch my drift. So yeah, sharing at this time the way that I really want to would just create so much friction in my personal life. And it just doesn't feel like I'm able to do that quite yet. It's uncomfortable, but I think there will be a way that I can now, and also a way that I can later. And they may just look a little bit different at those given times. But I'm going to try to offer these things up in a way that is a little bit more comfortable for the situation. And I'm hoping I can get more specific when I'm older. So I don't know, maybe somebody needed to hear that today, that it's okay to share in different ways at different times, depending on what, you need or what the current situation kind of calls for. Anyway, so yeah, that's what came up for me when you shared that quote. So there you go. If you would like to share a quote that gets read on an upcoming episode, the instructions for submitting that are at patreon.com/selfhelpless. And then the Apple Podcast review for today is from Jay Patriotic, and it says, "Thank you. It's a great podcast and love all the things you do." Jay Patriotic, JP, thank you so much for taking the time to leave a little note. It really means a lot. If you want to take the time to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, I'll get a chance to say hello and thank you personally on an upcoming episode. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you for tuning into Self-Helpless. You can find our brand new merch, Patreon community, and other fun goodies at selfhelplesspodcast.com. We'd be thrilled if you left an Apple Podcast review, shared this episode with a friend, or post about it on Instagram and tag us at Self-Helpless Podcast so we can repost you and say hi. As an independently produced show, we sincerely appreciate your support. Thanks, everybody.